Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Aussie writers and other creatives.
Hello, and I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well, and Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, ideas, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. Hi Rachel, great to see you again. It's been a frantic couple of weeks around here for both of us, I think, with a few parenting challenges thrown into the mix. I've had my daughter visiting from WA, and you've had school holidays in your juggle. How are you holding up? I'm sure you need a holiday now.
Parenting challenges equals school holidays in my book, basically.
Oh, it's too much. Do you need your own holiday?
I do. I would like my own holiday now, on my own. In a hotel. But, it's okay. It's okay. We're back into it. I think, did we have a bit of a break? Maybe we did.
We had a week. Yeah.
We had a week off. Lynn allowed us to have a week off, everybody.
Yes. Such a hard taskmaster.
She cracked that whip and now we're back.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, we're not the only ones juggling lots of kids and baby bumps and big jobs, are we?
No.
It brings us to our lovely guest today, and this is exciting. I always like it when our guest is a good friend of both of ours. We always, we try and get our friends on the podcast regularly, don't we?
We do. Lucky we've got some really clever and talented friends.
Very clever friends. We both have very clever friends. A lot of you who are listening will know her as well. She's truly amazing. Her name is Lisa Thomas, and she is a juggler extraordinaire and very amazingly calm, despite juggling a child and a very high-powered job.
Yes, we know she's a star, and Lisa, and she is always calm. I've seen her at Deadline and she always seems really calm. So either she's just got good at faking it or she's got some secret we need to know. So how about you introduce Lisa and tell our listeners all about her?
Okay, with a background in magazine publishing and leading communications for major events and initiatives, Lisa has worked in a number of private and public sector leadership roles. She's worked at various magazines, which is how we met her, including Marie Claire, Home Beautiful, and Vogue Living, before stepping over the divide, the dark side divide, into a role managing media and public relations for a major property developer, Meriton Group. Lisa then joined the New South Wales government in 2015 as a senior media advisor for the New South Wales Department of Premier and Cabinet, becoming media manager there. And she's also worked as manager of public affairs and communications for Transport for New South Wales. Today, Lisa oversees the delivery of communications, events and education programs for the Parliament of New South Wales. And Lisa's the Director, Communications, Engagement and Education at the New South Wales Department of Parliamentary Services. That is a mouthful. A government department that supports the operations of the Parliament. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Your career has gone you've taken this trajectory that's just so different to anyone we know. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, welcome, Lisa.
Welcome.
It's lovely to have you.
Thank you, guys. It is so much fun to be here talking to you both. So sorry, that was a really long bio.
It was.
I probably should have whittled off a few things and hidden a few more things on the resume, but that is an unusual path that I took, but very happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Very impressive bio. Yeah.
Yes, it's such an interesting career. All those years in magazines and then this big switch. What do you like about public affairs and government, do you think?
Look, I mean, the world that I left behind in magazines was, I still miss it today. And that was a really beautiful, creative world to inhabit. Not to say that you can't have those things in government communications as well. But the difference, I guess, and it might sound really corny, is that the reason that I do my job now and that the public service exists is to serve the people of New South Wales. So the stakes are higher, I guess. It's very fulfilling to know that you're making, that really tangible difference in people's lives. And we have, really large audiences out there. We have a lot of influence and a lot of opportunity, I guess, to get those stories out there and tell stories in a way that I couldn't do when I was limited to a monthly readership for a magazine. So that's really appealing to me, is about getting those stories out there to a broader audience, and really working on really meaningful projects that might span years or decades and have that potential to be truly life-changing for a lot of people.
Wow, I really love that. And I think that there are probably so many journos listening who, you know, might be thinking of stepping out of print or, you know, stepping into a different career. Do you think that, you know, it would be an easy switch for most journalists and they would have skills that would transport well?
I've talked to a lot of people who say, oh, how did you, you know, jump from magazines to government comms and what's involved? And all of those people have ended up being snapped up into government communications roles. There's a real need for competent communications professionals in, you know, across the public sector and private sector generally as well. I think I've always said to people that if you're versatile, and most writers are, most journalists are, then that's really what's involved, just an ability to put yourself in a bit of a different mind space, to care about the world we live in, and not necessarily politics, but certainly to be switched on about that landscape and to know what really matters for the state, for example, and for the country. But also, you know, if you're a journalist, I think you're probably innately a project manager. You might have a number of clients on the go, or stories or projects that you're managing, deadlines. If you're running your own business and managing a budget as well, those skills are critical, and they translate really well and really easily into a role where you might be looking after media and public affairs or campaigns. It's really the other side of the fence for the same subject matter. So you're no longer necessarily, you might still be a content producer, but you're really responsible for, you know, the well-being of that audience as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Wow, that's really interesting. Those skills I think are universal and really important. So tell us about your current role. Like, talk us through like your average day. Or I mean, I think sure some things are different every day, but so what are you working on at the moment?
So it is a really varied role, and it's a really exciting role. So I'm the Director of Comms Engagement and Education for the Parliament of New South Wales, and I work for the Department of Parliamentary Services. So that's a government department that supports the Parliament operations as a whole. So we have the upper house and the lower house, and we essentially put out programs for the people in South Wales, but also students. So we run a lot of school tours and programs, and we deliver communications for really fun kids activities and events as well. So that's always really interesting to work on. And we do a number of public talks and programs for just the public to come and enjoy as well. But my real job is essentially to put state parliament, I guess, on the map. So, you know, there's a real push at the moment. We're really making a lot of effort to increase engagement with the parliament. A lot of people don't know that we're here. So, you know, that 6 Macquarie Street, you can come inside, you can come and see how the legislative chambers work and how the laws are made. You can see Parliament in action. There's a restaurant that's open to the public. You can come and have high tea. We have a number of amazing events throughout the year. You know, we're participating in Vivid Sydney this year, so that'll have a few events on the program next month. And we do a lot in the Aboriginal engagement space as well. So, and we have exhibitions that rotate on our fountain court entrance when you come in. So those are the things that I'm really passionate about, getting the word out about and letting people know about. So it is an ever-changing program of events, but our real role as sort of the education team is to unpack the parliament for people, because a lot of people don't understand what's the difference between the parliament and the government, or, you know, federal parliament and state parliament, or, you know, even council for that matter. So we try and hold a number of public talks throughout the year where we get a lot of interesting people and current members of parliament to come along and share their personal experiences, tell their stories, why they do, what it means, what the process means, and essentially just bringing that to the people.
Wow. And would I be right in assuming that government communication roles have a lot of meetings involved?
So many meetings, I'm sure.
Look, we do have a lot of meetings, but I mean, that's where the ideas happen, you know, so you have to have them. They're a bit of a necessary evil to an extent. I think there's a real consciousness now, especially since the pandemic, people's time is precious and there are better ways to use your time. And there's certainly, I think there's an emphasis throughout the public sector to make those meetings matter and make them count. And certainly if you find yourself in a meeting that you maybe don't need to be in, then you can ask the group, do I really need to be here? And go and get on with whatever it is you need to be doing. So there's a general acceptance of that now, that meetings have to work, they have to be shorter and sharper. So there has been a lot of improvement on that scale. But yeah, we do have meetings. We have a lot of project meetings. You know, we have team meetings because that's really important for the development of the team and sharing ideas and knowledge. And, you know, part of my role also is that kind of outreach to make sure that the Parliament is talking to our neighbours, so that when you as a person in the community are coming to an event at the State Library or Botanic Gardens or the Opera House, that maybe we talk to each other and we can let those people know what's on nearby as well. So very much about working together to build that precinct presence too.
I wish I had the courage to say to a client, do I really need to be in this meeting? I'm leaving. Probably not.
Yeah, you need to be among colleagues and friends, I think, in that, to have that kind of frank discussion.
Oh, it's so tempting. So tempting. I'd like to ask you a little bit about like COVID-19 and the pandemic, because has it affected your work? I mean, obviously, on a personal level, it's probably affected whether you go into the office, but so I think it might make it easier to do your job, but also with government communications, it must have added a whole new area of comms.
Absolutely. And, you know, I've seen colleagues in other departments who have had to quite urgently set up a task force that is just around the clock 24/7 COVID comms. You know, the Parliament, our team did need to adapt and evolve quite quickly. So whereas before we might have been a team that looked after communications to the community generally or around programs and events and the like, we've also become a bit of a de facto comms team, which means operational communication. So that's around letting people know what are the entry requirements for coming into the building today, and if there's any kind of, you know, back in the real lockdown stage, whether there would be a need for emergency evacuation, for example. So looking at those, getting that kind of messaging out, and how do we do that? So our team had to get equipped quite quickly to learn how to manage all of those communications that become so vital, letting people know that there's been a COVID case. Parliament closed down for the lockdown, so that we had to, you know, we put out some communications around that, letting the people know that you could no longer come into the building, and we were quite stringent in our COVID safety precautions that we took as well, so that we had to obviously communicate that, and that was new for our team, but I think people, you know, rose to the challenge, and it's something that we'll continue on doing now that it's become part of the fabric of our lives.
I know we had a really great podcast episode with Nigel Bartlett, and he also wrote a blog post for Rachel's List about working in government, and both of those have been really popular, haven't they, Lynn?
Yes, so, really popular. I think it's an area of interest for a lot of people.
It is. And so I sort of wanted to ask, do you find that you're using many freelancers in your department? Is that something that's even freelance work even available? Are people more accepting of remote workers and that sort of thing if you're working in government?
It's changed a lot. It continues to change. So I think every department is probably a little bit different. And some departments have greater need for content producers, you know, copywriters, copy editors, speech writers, you know, writers generally than others might do. I think, you know, we're certainly seeing that departments will hire in short-term contractors, or there might be a particular need that arises, and also opportunities to work on things like booklets and government publications. That never stops. But certainly where I've worked in the different agencies and departments that I've worked in, if you are a freelancer looking to do some kind of government work, whether it's short-term, long-term contract or otherwise, you probably need to be on the books of a reputable recruiter. So a lot of government departments, they are required to go through government panel approved recruitment agencies, and there are some really big ones online. If you just Google, I won't name names because I don't want to miss out anyone, but certainly government agencies will usually they'll liaise directly with that recruitment agency. And I know from my own experience that getting on the books is free to do, but then really it's up to you to kind of drive your own career in that sense. And because they will often typecast and go, oh, this person's a magazine editor, I'm not going to put them forward for this role as a senior speechwriter or policy advisor or media advisor. And it's up to you to kind of remind them that you're here, and, you know, have you still got my resume? Are you putting it up for jobs? But also to say to them, can you put me forward for this job that I've seen advertised, and get people to think of you that way. And certainly keep looking on the government jobs website, which is iworkfornewsouthwales.sw.gov.au, and that's got a number of opportunities there. And again, you know, there's always a need for strong writing and clear communication, so that's certainly an area of growth.
So you kind of you would advise going the recruiter route rather than perhaps contacting the head of the content director or the content department? You could do both.
I mean, you probably will have to go the recruiter route ultimately, because that's the way the process works. Having said that, you can certainly get on people's radar and government departments can refer candidates to agencies as well and say, I'd like to have a closer look at this person, and can you put them in the mix when you consider this role that we've put out there as available. So certainly, yeah, you can it doesn't hurt to make those kind of connections and contacts, or just, same as in publishing industry more generally, you can always have a coffee with someone. You never know what might eventuate down the track. There might be an opportunity that opens up and they might be able to think of you. So but it's not as straightforward as saying, oh, I thought you were great, can you come in tomorrow? There's a bit more red tape involved than that.
Yeah, because one of the things that I've always thought about working for government is, I don't know how I go with dealing with all the bureaucracy, but you seem to cope beautifully with it. I mean, I know you've always, having worked with you've always been very organized
and very diplomatic.
Yeah. So is that your secret, or what's the secret?
I'm part of the bureaucracy now, so I better be careful what I say. But look, I think government has really shown me that the bureaucracy is very necessary. So I'm not a patient person. I would love to draft something, turn it around, get it out there, launch it, publish it the next day, the next week, the next month. There's the reason for the bureaucracy is that there are checks and measures in place to make sure that it's the right thing to do, it's the right use of taxpayer money, all of those things. So it can take months and months and months, which can seem like a long time to the community, I'm sure, and to people who are observing from the outside. But in that time, we take the time to do it properly, to undertake consultation with people who might be impacted, and that's so important. And I see that now in a way I didn't before. So I appreciate all those bureaucratic wheels, and there are many of them. But it's generally a lot of really passionate people. And I found, when I used to work at Department of Premier and Cabinet, that if you walk past people on their lunch breaks, they're not chatting about what they did at the weekend. They're genuinely saying, we have to get that pipeline built, and they think about these things all the time, and those they're always ticking away. So I think that's just so impressive that's something that the bureaucracy is, they know where they're going, and they're just they have a certain process that they need to fulfill.
You must have a few times though where you're just doing a lot of Zen breathing under your desk.
We still have deadlines to meet, and we still have, we do have products that we want to put out there for people to enjoy and participate in and come and see. So absolutely, there's a need for fast, efficient work in any place that you go. It's that balance, isn't it?
Yes,
of course. Okay, well, if any of our listeners, journos or otherwise, were considering a career in a senior government role, what would be your advice to them?
Look, I would say, first of all, I'd be really encouraging, because it's so rewarding, and you do get to really feel a part of things that, if you are particularly a resident of New South Wales, then this is about you. It's about our state, the people in our communities, regional, metropolitan. These are, big issues and that affect people's lives. So it's really interesting and fun and engaging to work on this kind of content. And beyond that, if you are a creative person, it's really amazed me just I think government can have a bit of reputation for being dry and having that corporate communications reputation, but I'm surrounded by so many wonderful creative people, real innovators, educators, people who come from all kinds of diverse backgrounds, and also talking about diverse media backgrounds. So they might have come from SBS or radio, or there's a lot of, I guess, room for movement within the public service. And one really beautiful thing that I really want to call out is just the number of older women in the public service. So when I worked in magazines, there was nobody over 50. I don't know where people went. Yeah. But, in the public service, some of our most senior leaders are women in their 60s, 70s, and that is just so great to be able to look forward to and to see. So that kind of senior career, again, can be really fulfilling. My role in media and comms and education now is around, like I said, telling those stories. So that's also something that if you really want your work to be meaningful in that way and have that, bigger audience, then it's such a good thing to do.
Can I ask, because you're in quite a senior role now, can you start at that level, or is it better to work your way up and sort of familiarize yourself with the culture?
That is such a good question. And look, you could come across at a more senior level, of course, people do. And just going back to what I said before about recruiters, if you were to come in at a more senior level, then you'd be looking to go through an executive headhunter really, rather than a base recruitment agency. So there are some around that will just, you know, tap you on the shoulder to see if this role might be of interest. That's very high level recruitment that we're talking about. But I feel like I came in at exactly the right level, which was in the public service, there are different grades.
Yeah.
So I came in, I had been a managing editor at Vogue Living most recently before I made that move. Obviously, I had the private sector stint in between, and I came in as a 9-10 level media advisor, senior media advisor, and that was really good because it recognised, you know, I had seniority. I was able to brief and work with some of our senior executives, but at the same time, I did have the ability to learn how the place worked, and how you know, government all kind of fit together. And before I worked my way up through those levels, I think it could be harder coming in at a higher level than that. But I often think if you're at that senior journalist level, then probably a 9-10 might be that minimum that you'd be looking at. But also a 7-8 role is also probably appropriate. That's we recruit a lot of, and when I say we, I mean the government generally, you know, copywriters, speech writers, designers, content creators at that sort of 7-8 level. If you're looking at roles that are advertised as a 3, 4 or 5, 6, that's more administrative support. So it might be you know, the editorial coordinator type level is a good comparison.
Yeah.
So you could do that. I think it would be hard to come in at too high level without understanding the machinery of government. But and you certainly need a bit of a background, I guess, or an interest that would help you get up to speed.
Yeah.
Can you sort of talk us through the difference between political appointments and public service?
I think you're probably asking me about what the difference is between government departments and ministerial offices.
Yes, that's what I think we're thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So government departments, so the public service, they will serve the government of the day. So whichever party is in power, the public service doesn't change, and they're neutral, and they will you know, do the best they can to serve the government and to, you know, explore policy and write policy depending on who that is. Whereas the ministers themselves, and obviously the Premier, they're elected officials. If they were to lose government, for example, that office, those staff would also lose their jobs. So they, and we've seen it happen with the departure of various premiers, that people pack up their boxes and they're off to the next opportunity. And usually they get one pretty quickly, but they don't have that stability of certainty that the public service provides, where you're not going to lose your job if the government were to change. So having said that, there are still lots of changes in government departments, because every election normally brings what we call MOG changes, machinery of government, which means that some departments are dissolved, other departments are formed, and people move around depending on restructures. So there is that kind of evolution that's just constant. But apart from that, you know, in terms of being appointed to those roles, usually it's the same process, and job will usually need to be advertised, and then there'll be a competitive market process, merit selection process. But the government certainly is very highly regulated in that regard. So that's kind of how the public service operates.
Oh, interesting. So what sort of skills do you need in your job? Do you think it would be necessary to do some sort of training, or is it if you're a writer with some sort of background, is it more about on the job, the cultural changes?
Look, I think in my line of work, which is remains media and communications and engagement now as well, I think it really helps to have been a journalist. So there's your training. And you know, if you can write well, that will get you very far in any field, any industry line of work. In terms of really specific training, look, I think if you're going to enter government, it obviously helps if you have an interest in what the government does, and that might not mean specific training, but it might be helpful if you had an interest in policy or wanted to do some kind of course that gave you at least the fundamentals of that. I have a few colleagues who, you know, gone and done a master's in, you know, it might be government relations or international policy or political science, or, you know, it could be any of those things. I have not done that. I sort of learnt on the job and through my family history and career, but so there's no specific training that I would recommend. I think having that media now certainly is important, understanding what makes a story, what makes it good, what makes it readable. You know, in my time as a media manager, I've been pitched lots of stories, and I've thought, would anybody actually be interested to know that or to read about it until it really matters to them? So and I guess that's an important part of this role, is to draw out those stories and make sure the hidden stories are being told, and some of the other stuff can wait until it's time.
I just want to take a really quick step back, because something that we haven't asked you, and obviously I know you best from our magazine days, that's when we all got to know each other. But you also, I do know as well, that you came from a very political family. So was this sort of a natural step for you, or, tell us a bit about that? And
Oh, thanks. Right. Yeah, not so much a political family, more a public service family. So
Yep.
I'm from Canberra, so that probably says it all. But I didn't grow up there, so I was a diplomat. So my father was a diplomat. My mother's father was also a diplomat, and so many of her her sisters mainly. So there's been a real, diplomatic history in the family. So it was kind of, I don't know, destiny in a way that it would come full circle, and I would one day join the public service myself. My mother was also a public servant for 30 years in the Department of Education. So there is a very strong family link there. And I had originally planned to join the public service after finishing university. I'd done the rounds of grad interviews and I'd been offered a few positions. And I chucked it all in to move to Sydney to take a job as editorial assistant for B magazine that doesn't exist anymore. So I never looked back. That was,
that's where I met you.
That's right. So that will always hold a special place in my heart. And I had, a wonderful decade working in magazines. But yeah, I sort of understood the public service, and certainly I care a lot about, I guess I'd call it managerial reform, how to make it better and do away with some of that red tape that we talked about before. And so those are the kinds of things that I feel like I can influence now in a way that I couldn't before.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's that insight, and working and growing up all around the world as you did in different embassies, you probably got a really good understanding of different sort of types of government as well.
Definitely different types of government, and also I think it gave me a great schooling in protocol, which is very critical in my role now, and also when I worked at the Premier's Department, and we dealt with things like we managed state funerals and visits from foreign dignitaries and looked after the media arrangements for those sort of visits and initiatives. And I think, we had a support of a wonderful protocol team, but it was also probably important that I had some awareness of how those events are meant to operate, and an understanding of who's who and what their roles are and what they should be. And I guess I do have that background of family knowledge there, which has helped me, because I haven't had to ask too many questions along the way, but still learning every day, because they all bring their unique challenges.
Makes me wonder if your parents went, "What? You're going into magazines?" Like, when you made that,
they would. I thought they'd go, "What are you doing, throwing in this reliable public service role for this magazine business?" But they were really supportive, and I think it was the one that got away. They'd always dreamt about doing something so creative, and they really supported me to do that. But then when the time came, I think they could see why I did make the switch. And I think we all have struggled with the fact that magazines are, their salaries are not increasing; they're going the other direction, and it's becoming harder. And everyone must be multi-skilled now. You can't simply be a writer; you also need to be a photojournalist and a website administrator. So all those things,
SEO consultant.
That's right. The juggle has become harder, and I found, certainly at the time I left Vogue Living, the budgets had shrunk down to nothing, and it wasn't sustainable anymore to run that beautiful magazine. So I'm certainly happier to be where I am now, where we can actually get things done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of our regular listeners will know that we ask every guest about their tech tips or their tools of the trade, things that they find useful. Do you have any programs that you really love, or any tools that you want to share with us that help you in your role?
That is such a good question. And look, I think, I'm pretty old school, and perhaps so is my particular area of communications and the team. So we do things, we still use mainstream media, we still write media releases, and we still, have our events in person as well as online. And, we try to sort of maximise engagement through a range of channels, digital through to print and other ways as well. In terms of my own sort of personal work management, I use Trello, which is the obvious project management tool. That's really useful. We don't have it in the department, but I do use a lot Miro. Miro board is kind of a creative whiteboard, I guess, which is just a great way to collaborate, particularly when we're doing really great events and partnerships with agencies external to us as well. So that's a really great way to kind of come together and dream a bit about what you can plot out together. And I think, really, we still have a lot of just in-person conversations to nut out the things that we do.
Wow.
And then, yes, I know we've got a designer to bring those to life. And yeah, it's something I'm always looking to explore, but I haven't come across anything that's changed my life at this stage.
Yeah.
So tell us where people can find out about you and the department you work for, because I think you might have people that want to do a tour of Parliament House or work it, because it's one of the things. I've been to Parliament House. I remember taking a group of cadet journalists through one of those tours back in the day when I was a cadet counsellor with News Limited. It's quite a beautiful building. It's really old, the Macquarie Street one.
Stunning, it's a 200-year-old building nearly, and
Australia's first parliament.
Australia's oldest parliament,
Yeah.
parliament, and has a lot of history there, a lot of heritage. And in my team, we're really closely with our collections specialists as well, who are always telling us amazing stories of beautiful pieces they've unearthed and portraits that might be on display. So certainly I'll never miss an opportunity to spruik a visit to Parliament House. So we are there, we are open, and hopefully becoming more of a destination for people in the state and, even, dare I say, overseas. So you can come in, we're open on weekdays, and you can come and have high tea on a Friday, and we offer public tours twice a week as well. So it's certainly a lovely place to drop in and visit. If you want to find out more about us, the aspect of the website that my team would run is education.parliament.nsw.gov.au, and we also look after parliament.nsw.gov.au/visit, so and /events as well. So it's around those kind of public engagement, interaction with the community, and any ways that we can help the public to engage better and understand their state parliament a bit better. So those are the kinds of places that that you'll find us. And other than that, I'm always trying to get us a little bit more coverage on, TV, radio. We had a wonderful event on Friday for the school holidays, a festival of democracy, and we had a lovely Channel 7 story run about that. So that was really fun to do. And that's our real reason for being, is to kind of communicate what is democracy, particularly to the children of the state, and also what it means, why we need it, why we have it, how fragile it is. So that's something that is kind of our defining motto, I guess. So that's why that's what you'll mainly find on the education website, but also in a lot of the activities and events that we run as well.
Wow, this has been such a fascinating chat. And when I think about it, when you and I get together, we're just drinking cups of tea and chasing our kids around and not really talking about work. So
I'm glad you said cups of tea.
or wine, either or. But, I feel like I've learned so much about your job and your career that I didn't know. And I feel really sorry that I didn't ask more questions before, but, it's just been so fascinating. So thanks for sharing all that with us and with our listeners.
So much fun. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Always great company you are.
Yes,
Thank you for having me. It's a delight to share the work that we do, and always happy to chat to people who might be curious about a career in that kind of public affairs space or government comms. There's a lot of reward, I think, to be had there, a lot of fulfillment.
Absolutely. And we'll share all your links that you put down. We'll share those in the show notes, and we could also share your LinkedIn if you wanted us to, or maybe you don't.
You're welcome to. It's not that exciting, but
so if people did want to chat to you about potential things,
anytime.
they could hit you up on LinkedIn. Brilliant. Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks again.
See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.